Hey there folks, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and this week might seem normal, but dig below the surface and you'll find some stuff, cause it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. But hell, what is this? A week that actually appears to be less busy than expected? Where there might be some chart chicanery behind the scenes, but it didn't manifest in an avalanche of annoyance? Where possible album bombs just didn't manifest? Hey, you know what? I know it's not gonna last for the next month ahead, but some normalcy? Let me have this. But in the meantime, we've got our top 10, where As It Was by Harry Styles is still holding the number 1, but its margin at the top is increasingly narrow, and considering Bad Habit by Steve Lacy at number 2 is so robust on streaming, if it was gonna make some radio inroads, it might have a serious spot for the number 1. But it's also got competition, because unseated from the top thanks to the big remix, we now have Super Freaky Girl by Nicki Minaj surging to number 3, but likely not getting much higher. It's just not getting the radio traction you expect to really muscle in. It did get over Sunroof by Nicki Yor and Daisy at number 4, mostly because all that effectively has is radio, with low streaming continuing on the downturn, but it did hold the line against I Like You, a Happier Song by Post Malone and Doja Cat, making its radio gains at number 5. Although they're probably a margins game on the bad streaming numbers. But this opens up the door for You Proof by Morgan Wallen up considerably to number 6, which is rising on streaming and has more radio traffic than you would want to admit, especially when it hasn't been shipped to pop radio yet, and it could very well be. Hell, it knocked back About Damn Time by Lizzo to number 7, even though that song is naturally on a radio downturn, and that opens up the window for I Ain't Worried by One Republic holding at number 8, although its radio gains seem to be a fair bit slower. Then we got the expected fall off for Late Night Talking by Harry Styles to number 9 as the sales boost ebbs away and the radio peaks, and that means Wait For You by Future, Thames, and Drake is back in the top 10 because even despite being on the downturn with the radio, the streaming just will not die for this song. But on that note, our losers and dropouts. And there are a few big ones in the latter category. Speaking of Future, Puffin' on Zooties looks like it's going to be just shy of the year-end list for 2022, or on the borderline at least, while Numb Little Bug by M. Bayhold and Shivers by Ed Sheeran comfortably lock in their year-end spots as they exit. But there's not much in the way of losers here. Off the debut, Detox by Lil Baby fell to 64, and continuing losers, God Did by DJ Khaled featuring Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, John Legend, and Friday fell to 83, Sticky by Drake hit 84, and Beat the Odds by Lil TJ hit 91. Outside of that, Da 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 by Leonardo Wick seems to be heading back to 59, With the Woman You Love by Justin Moore faded to 81, Where It Ends by Bailey Zimmerman doesn't look like it's catching fire at 93, and Alone by Rod Wave hit 96. But moving on to our gains and returns, well, there were questions surrounding a rumor whether or not Billboard would revise some of their rules surrounding older songs going viral being allowed to chart on the Hot 100 outside of a release window. But as of now, it looks kind of piecemeal, and we'll get into it when we talk about our new arrivals. As of now, well, Never Sleep by Nav, Travis Scott, and Lil Baby came back to 76 thanks to the album traction. Cuff It by Beyonce is back at 85 thanks to virality, and Wait in the Truck by Hardy and Lainey Wilson looks to be coming back thanks to a slight radio push. Now for our gains, well, off the debut, Romantic Homicide by David is picking up traction to 45. Ugh. And off the return, Don't Come Looking by Jackson Dean picked up to 71. And to continue on with the bad news, I'm Good Blue by David Guetta and BB Rexa is surging up to 31, thanks primarily to streaming. Thank y'all for that. But outside of that, To Be Loved, Am I Ready by Lizzo continued up to 67, and riding a radio push I did not see coming, FNF Let's Go by Glorilla and Hit Kid rose up to 42. Honestly expected there'd be more streaming there, kind of a bit surprising. But anyway, now for a reasonable list of new arrivals. Pleasantly starting with number 100, Burn 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 by Zach Bryan.
Late night girl, seems to be where I feel most alone.
So for those of you who don't follow my main channel, you might not realize that Zach Bryan has already dropped a 34-song album and a 9-song EP just this year. And this song's not on either of them, because he does not slow down shoveling out the material. Now I got mixed opinions on that. Yeah, a lot of the songs are great, but not always refined as they could be, and it will eventually hit diminishing returns, like here where this potentially blocked Oklahoma Smoke Show from getting promotional traction, and that song's great. But okay, fine, new single, and shocker, it's really damn good, if not altogether surprising. The liquid touches of electric guitar around the acoustics and subtle groove, they're great. Zach Bryan is effective behind the mic, although I wasn't really wild about how he started howling on the final chorus outro. And yeah, I do like the content, where Zach Bryan muses about newfound success that takes him out of his element to a lot of cities where he's still got his rough edges. He wishes he could take off to some quieter places and live a life free of all the cheap artifice for as long as he can. It does kind of remind me a bit of Jason Isbell's Last of My Kind, and it doesn't quite have that added nugget of self-awareness of this path that would notch it a little bit higher for me. But yeah, you know what? It's still great. Check it out. Number 95, Purge Me by YoungBoy, Never Broke Again.
Hope that you won't do me dirty. I drink lean out the bottle, so flying right from the bottom, I'ma shine on.
I bet a lot of you did not know that YoungBoy Never Broke Again dropped another mixtape a couple weeks back, partially because he put it out in the middle of a tracking week, but also because he's been trying to get off of Atlantic, and that means a bunch of his promo just evaporated. In any case, it was still enough for him to get 2 songs on the Hot 100. This is the first, and honestly I'm a bit torn on it. Yeah, it's barely over 2 minutes with a single verse, and YoungBoy spends most of the song in his upper register crooning, which does not sound that good, and I think this is production that was left over from a Rod Wave album, but it's also not bad for it, with the gentle acoustics and the piano that helps YoungBoy sell a more organic, melancholic atmosphere, where even if you don't like his auto-tune squawking, he's at least trying to be a little bit more romantic, a little less murder on his mind, and even a plea not to be hurt in the same way when he's high out of his mind and vulnerable at this point. Now, it doesn't really wow or impress me much. It's a pretty natural extension of what YoungBoy normally does, and he's touched on this territory before, but you know what, being honest, I'm not gonna call it bad either. Number 90, Mary on a Cross by Ghost.
Mariana Cross, not just another Bloody Mary. Mariana Cross.
Alright, so remember when I said Billboard might be changing some rules to enable songs that are a little bit older going viral with enough traction to chart? Prime example. And it just so happens to be Ghost's first ever song on the Hot 100, about 7 years late. Now for context, this was a song originally put on Ghost's 2019 EP, 7 Inches of Satanic Panic, get it, as a B-side, but since it's gone viral, the band has cannily re-released it as a single, plus a version that's been slowed down in reverb because the internet. But for the standard version, yeah, it's a Ghost song, but not really one of the better ones, with more of a focus on that seedy organ line than a strong bass groove or a guitar with some muscle. And yeah, the content's mostly transgressive, and the Road Warrior hookup and the horniness of the quasi-satanic blowjob on the hook. I mean, I'm gonna skip on all the lore, because in recent years it's probably received more attention than it deserves. But you know what? When the atmosphere is less impressive, and the writing feels oddly clunky with the overwritten verses, and a hook that's maybe leaning into the sillier 60s affectations more than it should. I mean, why the hell couldn't Dance Macabre go viral instead? So yeah, fine, it is good, I guess, but I expect more. Number 77, Flawless by Yeat featuring Lil Uzi Vert.
Money swollen like sis, they the perfect in a kid. Got a Billy mistake on my hater, the big better pill up the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million, then double that shit and I chip it again.
So here's an observation I made publicly a couple days ago. Despite Yeat's insane streaming numbers, his pure sales are jaw-droppingly bad. And even if he's more of a streaming artist, the opportunity cost of streaming compared to selling records or tickets, it's gonna impact how much he's treated by the label and how much traction he will ultimately get long term. In any case, this song has a big Lil Uzi Vert feature, no surprise it's charting now, and wow, I don't like this at all. The bass boosted mix where the sickly sweet synth seems to slosh around with what might be Yeat's worst vocal performance to date. This guy just has no power. He sounds sloppy in the mic with some really cruddy vocal blending, so it's really just a mechanism to enable Uzi's verse. And, I mean, look, I get Lil Uzi Vert's appeal, but between the empty brand name porn and some pretty empty TV references and the wordplay, it's not good enough to save this song. Which sucks. Let's move on. Number 68, Freestyle by Lil Baby.
I just pulled up me a A. Real nigga all in my face. 500 racks in my safe. 500 racks to the plug. What you know about showing love? What you know about pulling up? And Billy Chubbs. Make these bitches fall in love.
And here's where that rule shift I was describing really comes into focus. Because this is just a freestyle from Lil Baby that got commercially repackaged after going viral. From 2017. That was 5 years ago. About 2 or 3 years before folks outside the diehards would acknowledge that Lil Baby was remotely interesting. So with all that in mind, low expectations. And yeah, they were met, but they certainly weren't exceeded. The bare bones melody with the cheap trap percussion, the Migos triplet flow with only traces of the melodic embellishments that might come, the stock flexing and content that had a lot of folks calling Lil Baby a young thug wannabe. I mean, it's a prototype of what he would become. And while that might work as a curiosity for the fans, I was only barely on board with him now. The beginning of his journey is just not compelling for me whatsoever. So yeah, I guess 2017 revivalism is starting early, but like Lil Baby, I'm gonna keep moving forward. Number 66, Put It On Me by YoungBoy, Never Broke Again.
Me make sure that they don't. We gon' fuck from night to all the way to the morning. I had to tell that bitch she right. Said them niggas claim they gon' don't.
And here we go, second YoungBoy track. And maybe it's just me, I at least got the potential with this one. The sing-song hook against the skittering piano, it's not bad. A bit of a Lil Wayne-inspired melody that kind of works with YoungBoy's squawking, even if the actual tune is suffocated behind all the vocals and the percussion. But let's not mince words. Even with the second verse, this song just does not feel finished. The second verse is a fraction of the first. The ramble between the gunplay and the sex is seriously scrambled. YoungBoy sounds more like he's delivering a freestyle than Lil Baby just did on a song of that name. It's that much of a mess. It has me wonder that without serious label backing and just how inconsistent YoungBoy's been the past year, whether he'll be able to sustain beyond the diehards. Because I gotta be honest, this is sure as hell not getting there. Number 36, Under the Influence by Chris Brown.
Speaks to me. I don't know what you did. Get to me. Your body lightweight. Speaks to me.
Okay, context. Chris Brown's been putting out utterly bloated projects the past couple of years, either on their own original or extended versions, basically flooding the market for his remaining diehards and making it damn near torture for any critic trying to parse through it. Which is why, after a certain point, a lot of critics just stopped talking about Chris Brown albums, and the labels have given up with proper pushes. I mean, they're not making as much on the back end with Chris Brown, given that he owns all of his masters, and if he's not delivering a project that they can credibly market and sell outside of Team Breezy, why bother? Now, that has not stopped some singles from getting the radio push or songs from going viral, hence this track from the extended edition of Indigo from 2019 hitting the charts now. I get the feeling Billboard's going to be trading this on an ongoing case-by-case basis thing instead of with any sort of consistent rule, and that's all more interesting than this stale trap R&B cut, where Chris Brown is smothered in auto-tune to simulate being high on cough syrup. Everything besides the bass synth sounds really cheap and weedy, including the hi-hat whirs, and the lyrics are stock, half-crooned attempts to lure some girl to come over with no credible atmosphere. In other words, it's a sort of forgettable deep cut that outside of TikTok, even the fans would have forgotten. It's also lousy. The sooner we all move on, the better. And finally, number 22, Thank God by Kane Brown and Katelyn Brown.
Thank God your hand fits perfectly in mine. Thank God.
All right. Kane Brown made a song with his wife Katelyn, and they both have credits on it. Apparently they've made music before, they were just looking for the perfect time to really push this. And okay, let me get my production niggles out of the way first, and that it's a Dan Huff mix, so all the percussion and snaps all sound synthetic and fizzy, and it's not quite as warm as it should be opposite the pedal steel and the guitars. But outside of that, well, Katelyn Brown is a better singer than I was expecting, and her higher, breathier tone is a nice compliment to Kane Brown, and they have some chemistry on the mic, but I'm sorry, otherwise this feels so generic. It's stock boyfriend country that leans on the religious iconography and the hope that you might find this couple romantic or vaguely interesting. And with a very underwhelming melodic composition, look, it's fine, but there's not enough to really hook me here. It'll work for the Hallmark crowd. I'm probably gonna forget this exists. But yeah, this week falls out very easily. Worst is Flawless by Yeat and Lil Uzi Vert, with dishonorable mention to Under the Influence by Chris Brown. Shocker. Now, best of the week, I mean, come on, there's not going to be much that's going to beat Burn, Burn, Burn by Zach Bryan, and I guess honorable mention is going to Marry on a Cross by Ghost by default. Even if I personally expect more from that band, it is still Ghost at the end of the day. Next week actually seems pretty quiet, at least until some of those rounds of album bombs hit in a couple of weeks. We will have to see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.